Living My Truth. The story of Sandra Wilson. Growing up as the daughter of Carolyn Wilson was never easy. Every breath I took, every decision I made, felt like it was being watched through a magnifying glass. My father, the powerful CEO of Wilson Industries, had already mapped out my life before I could even speak my first words. "Sandra, darling," he would often say in his deep, commanding voice as he adjusted his spotless suit. A Wilson never settles for second best. Our enormous mansion in West Hollywood stood like a monument to that idea. With its 29 perfectly decorated rooms, polished marble floors, and golden chandeliers, it looked like something out of a movie. But to me, it felt cold, like a beautifully decorated prison. Every inch of it whispered expectations I didn't ask for. By the time I turned 27, I had become everything my parents wanted. I had a degree from Harvard Business School, a high-paying job as a junior executive at Wilson Industries, and a diamond ring from Jeffrey Robinson, heir to Robinson Technologies. He was chosen by my father, of course. Everything about our relationship was a business deal dressed as love. There was just one problem. I was deeply, hopelessly, and completely in love with someone else. It all started on a rainy Tuesday morning. My sleek red Ferrari broke down on my way to work, leaving me stranded by the side of the road in designer heels. That's when Donald Lewis pulled up in an old, beat-up tow truck. He stepped out wearing jeans and a flannel shirt, his smile more comforting than any luxury brand I'd ever worn. "Looks like your timing belt's gone," he said gently, wiping his hands on a rag. "I can fix it, but it'll take a few hours." Something about his honest eyes and kind voice made me stay. Instead of calling a ride, I waited at his small, cozy garage, sipping awful vending machine coffee and talking about everything and nothing. Donald wasn't just a mechanic. He had graduated top of his class in engineering but turned down fancy office jobs to do what he loved, working with his hands and helping people. "Life's too short to live someone else's dream," he told me with a small laugh, his eyes full of passion. Those words hit me like lightning. For the first time in my life, someone had said exactly what I'd been feeling but didn't dare to say out loud. One cup of coffee led to another. Then dinners. Then long drives along the coast and quiet picnics in hidden parks. Donald never cared about my last name or the millions in my family's bank account. He made me feel seen, heard, and most importantly, free. Around him, I could laugh loudly, speak honestly, and simply be me. For 8 months, I lived 2 lives. By day, I was the perfect daughter and fiancée, smiling at fundraisers and board meetings. By night, I was Sandra, the real Sandra, falling more and more in love with a man who knew my soul better than anyone. But I knew the truth couldn't stay hidden forever. The moment everything changed came during a fancy charity gala at our mansion. My mother showed me off like a trophy, and Jeffrey, ever the businessman, rambled on about mergers and profits. Then, in front of a crowd of socialites, my mother made an announcement. "After the wedding, Sandra will be in charge of our East Coast operations. The Robinsons and Wilsons together. Just imagine the power." Her words echoed through my head like a cage door slamming shut. I couldn't breathe. I felt like I was drowning. I slipped away into the garden, my hands shaking as I pulled out my phone and called Donald. "I can't do this anymore," I whispered through tears. "I can't marry him. I can't live this lie." There was silence on the other end of the line, and then his calm voice came through. "Then don't," he said simply. "Be who you are, Sandra." That's the woman I fell in love with. That night changed everything. The next morning, I packed a small bag. I left behind the mansion, the company, the engagement, and all the expectations that never truly belonged to me. I didn't know exactly what the future would look like, but for the first time, I knew one thing for sure. It would be my future. One I chose. One built not on pressure or legacy, but on truth, love, and the quiet power of being myself. I stood outside my father's study, heart thudding against my chest like a warning drum. My hand hovered over the doorknob, shaking slightly. I was terrified, but I knew I had to do this. No more hiding. No more pretending. When I finally walked in, The room smelled of old books and expensive cigars, the same way it always did. My father sat behind his massive mahogany desk, surrounded by leather-bound books and trophies of a life built on control and success. "Daddy," I said, my voice trembling but my back straight, "I need to talk to you." He glanced up from his papers, eyebrows raised. "I can't marry Jeffrey," I blurted out. "I'm in love with someone else." The silence that followed felt endless, and then everything exploded. My father's face turned a deep shade of red, then purple. He stood so fast his chair screeched across the floor. "A mechanic?" he thundered after I told him about Donald. "My daughter? A Wilson? Throwing her life away for a grease monkey?" "He's not just a mechanic," I said firmly, though my hands were shaking. "He's an engineer. And he's smart. He's kind. He makes me happy." But my father wouldn't hear it. "You will marry Jeffrey as planned," he snapped, slamming his fist onto the desk so hard that a framed photo tipped over. "Or you can forget the trust fund, your job at the company, everything. Is that clear?" I stood taller than I'd ever stood before. I looked my father in the eye, and for the first time in my life, I didn't back down. "Crystal clear," I said. "Goodbye, Daddy." Walking out of that room felt like stepping off a cliff. The rest of the house exploded into chaos. My mother sobbed dramatically, begging me to reconsider. The house staff whispered behind closed doors. But I didn't stop. I went upstairs, packed a single suitcase, and walked away from the only life I'd ever known. Donald was waiting for me outside his modest apartment, pacing nervously. When he saw me, his eyes filled with relief and worry. "Sandra," he said, "are you sure? That's your whole life. Your family, your future. I can't let you give it all up for me." I put my hand on his cheek and kissed him softly. "I'm not giving up my life, Donald. I'm finally starting it." The next few months were hard. I moved into Donald's tiny one-bedroom apartment. I got a job as a junior business consultant at a small firm. Nothing glamorous, just honest work. I learned how to budget, how to cook basic meals, and how to navigate a world without endless credit cards and family influence. It wasn't easy. My parents tried everything to bring me back. Emotional guilt trips, angry phone calls, freezing my accounts, canceling my credit cards. They even tried to get me fired from my new job. But none of it worked. If anything, it pushed Donald and me closer. We were in it together, and that made us stronger. When we decided to get married, we chose a small park nearby. There was no designer dress, no grand venue, and no media coverage. Just a simple white gown from a department store, a few folding chairs, and the people who truly loved us. The morning of the wedding, I received a text from my mother. "Your father and I will be attending. One last chance to fix this mistake." My heart skipped a beat as I showed the message to Donald. He took my hand gently. "It's your call, love," he said. "Whatever you want." Despite everything, a part of me still wanted them there. They were my parents, after all. So when I walked down that grassy aisle, barefoot and nervous, my eyes immediately found them. They stood at the back of the crowd. My father looked like he'd bitten into a lemon. My mother clutched a monogrammed handkerchief to her chest, dabbing at her eyes. But they didn't step forward. They didn't join the ceremony. And that was okay. During the casual barbecue reception, no champagne towers or 6-course meals, just burgers and potato salad under the sun, my mother made one final attempt. "Sandra, darling," she said, her voice thick with emotion and pride swallowed under desperation. "It's not too late. Come home. We'll forget all this." I looked around at the friends laughing by the picnic tables, at Donald smiling as he helped a little girl with her soda cup, and at the sky wide and free above us. Then I turned to her. "I am home." And I meant it. "It's not too late," my father said sharply, cutting straight to the heart of it. "Jeffrey would still take you back. Think about what you're throwing away." He didn't try to hide his frustration. He rarely did. "This is your last chance, young lady. Stay with this person," he said it like Donald was some kind of disease, "and you'll never see a penny of your inheritance. Is that really what you want? To live in poverty?" I didn't answer him right away. Instead, I turned and looked at Donald. He was across the park, laughing with a few of our friends, holding a paper plate stacked with food in one hand, still looking devastatingly handsome in a rented suit that didn't quite fit right. He looked so relaxed, so real, so mine. Then I turned back to my parents, dressed in their perfectly tailored clothes, standing stiffly under the weight of their wealth and expectations. They looked out of place among the folding chairs and barbecue smoke, like royalty who had wandered into the wrong kingdom. "What I want," I said calmly but clearly, "is to be happy. Donald makes me happy. And if you can't accept that, then maybe we don't need your money. Or you." My father's face turned the same dangerous shade of purple it had the day I told him I wouldn't marry Jeffrey. "You're no daughter of mine," he spat, then spun on his heel and stormed off. My mother hesitated, her eyes glassy. For a brief second, I thought she might say something, anything, but she only gave a sad little shake of her head and followed him. As they walked away, Donald appeared beside me and slid an arm around my waist. "You okay?" he asked gently. I leaned into him and watched the two people who had built my world walk out of it. "Never better," I whispered. That was 8 months ago. Donald and I built a life of our own, small, quiet, and filled with love. He kept working at the garage, pouring his heart into every repair job, and started taking night classes toward his master's degree in mechanical engineering. I threw myself into my consulting work, slowly growing a steady list of clients. We watched our spending, used coupons, and chose secondhand furniture with love. It wasn't glamorous, but it was ours. We were truly happy. But life, as I'd learned, doesn't like to stay still. Something had been different lately. Donald had been distracted, taking odd phone calls, working strange hours, and brushing off my questions with vague answers. I tried not to let my thoughts spiral, but the worry crept in like a shadow. Was I losing him? Was history repeating itself? Then everything changed on a Friday night that started out completely ordinary. I came home early from work, grinning like a fool, holding a bag of takeout from our favorite Thai place. I planned to surprise Donald, maybe eat dinner on the couch, binge our favorite show, laugh until our stomachs hurt. But the apartment was quiet, empty. On the kitchen counter was a note in his messy handwriting. "Working late at the garage, love you." It wasn't unusual. He often stayed late to finish up jobs. But tonight, something felt wrong. The air felt heavy. My gut twisted. I tried calling him. Straight to voicemail. The knot in my stomach tightened. Unable to sit still, I grabbed the food and drove to the garage. Maybe he'd lost track of time. Maybe everything was fine. But when I pulled up, the place was dark. Closed. Donald's old truck was nowhere in sight. I tried calling again. Still voicemail. And then, just as panic was truly beginning to take hold, my phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number lit up the screen. "Mrs. Lewis, please come to 1920 Santa Monica Boulevard immediately. It's about your husband." My heart stopped. Santa Monica Boulevard. That was in the industrial part of town, far from Donald's garage. My hands shook as I typed the address into my GPS and sped through the dark city, worst-case scenarios clawing at my brain. What if he was hurt? What if it was worse? Eventually, I arrived at a sleek, massive building made of dark glass and steel, standing like a fortress in the night. As I pulled in, the front security gate opened automatically. A uniformed guard greeted me at the entrance. "Mrs. Lewis," he said respectfully, nodding. "Please park here. Take the executive elevator to the top floor." Executive elevator? Top floor? What was going on? I did as I was told, each step heavier than the last. When the elevator doors opened, I found myself in a breathtaking office suite, floor-to-ceiling windows offering a sparkling view of the city skyline. Polished floors, modern furniture, a quiet hum of something important happening just beneath the surface. And there, standing in the center of it all, was Donald. Not in jeans and a grease-stained shirt, but in a tailored suit, smiling, waiting for me. "Sandra," he said softly, stepping toward me. I blinked, confused. What is this? What's going on?" He took my hands in his. "I've been working on something for a long time. Secretly. I didn't want to tell you until it was real. Until I knew I could give you this moment. He gestured around the office. I sold a patent. A big one. For an engine system I designed. A company bought it and offered me a leadership role, stock options, and everything. I signed the deal this morning. I couldn't speak. I didn't tell you because I didn't want you to think I was trying to be enough for you, he continued. You already made me feel like I was. But I wanted to do this. For us. I threw my arms around him, tears streaming down my cheeks, laughing and crying all at once. I didn't fall in love with you for your money, Donald, I whispered. I fell in love with your heart. And now, standing in that glittering office above the city, I realized something. I hadn't just chosen happiness. I had chosen right. I stepped into the room, heart pounding in my chest like a drum, hands slightly trembling. The elevator door slid shut behind me, and I felt like I'd just entered another world. The space was breathtaking, sleek, modern, with high glass windows that overlooked the entire city. Sunlight spilled across polished floors and expensive furniture. At the far end of the room, behind a massive glass desk, stood a man with his back to me. Donald, but not the Donald I was used to. Gone were the faded jeans and oil-smudged t-shirts. In their place was a perfectly tailored navy blue suit that probably cost more than our entire month's rent. His posture was confident, his presence commanding, but when he turned to face me, I still saw him, my Donald. His warm smile was there, though slightly nervous, and when he spoke, it was with that familiar gentleness. Sandra, he said softly, using the nickname only he called me. I think it's time I tell you everything. But before he could take another step, the office doors burst open with the force of a storm. And just like that, my worst nightmare stood in front of me. My father, my mother, and Jeffrey Robinson, still clinging to his arrogance like a bad cologne. What is the meaning of this? My father bellowed, his voice echoing off the walls. His face had already turned that deep, furious shade of purple I knew too well. Security said Sandra came up here. What are you doing in the CEO's office? He growled, glaring at Donald. You're just a mechanic. Donald calmly straightened his tie and stepped forward, his voice steady. Actually, Mr. Wilson, he said, walking around the desk with quiet confidence. I am the CEO. Donald Lewis, founder and chief executive officer of Lewis Innovations. Silence dropped over the room like a bomb. My mother stumbled back a step and grabbed the arm of a nearby chair for support. Jeffrey's jaw hung open like he'd forgotten how to close it. And for the first time in my entire life, my father looked lost, speechless. But you're a mechanic, my mother finally stammered. Donald turned to her, still holding my hand. Yes. I started as a mechanic. I opened a small chain of auto repair shops after college with a loan from one of my professors. That was my first business. But Lewis Innovations is my main work now. We're a technology company focused on electric vehicle batteries. Revolutionary ones. He glanced at me with a soft smile. All those late nights at the garage? We weren't fixing cars. We were finalizing a prototype that's going to change the way the world drives. My head was spinning. It was so much so fast. Why didn't you tell me? I asked, stunned. Donald looked into my eyes and answered with a quiet honesty that made my heart ache. Because I needed to know. When we met, I had just been listed on Forbes 32 under 32. Every woman I dated before you only cared about my status, my bank account. But you fell in love with me when you thought I was just a guy with dirty hands and a tow truck. You gave up everything for me. I needed to be sure it was real. Tears welled in my eyes, not from sadness, but from how deeply I was seen. Meanwhile, my father was trying to piece it all together. Lewis Innovations, he muttered, gears finally clicking in his business brain. You're the company that just disrupted the EV battery market. The one every major car manufacturer is fighting to work with. Donald nodded. Our market valuation hit $50 billion. Not quite Wilson Industries territory, but we're catching up. I couldn't help it, I laughed. Loudly. Freely. All this time, they looked down on him. On us. Called him just a mechanic. and he had been quietly building an empire right under their noses. But Donald wasn't done. He turned to face my parents, voice still calm but sharp as steel beneath the velvet. "And now," he said, "I'd like to talk about how you treated your daughter. The woman who, by the way, became one of the largest shareholders in Lewis Innovations the day she married me." My father's face went pale. Wilson Industries has been trying to enter the electric vehicle market for years. A connection to Lewis Innovations would have changed everything. Now that door was slammed shut. "Now see here," my father began, trying to take control. But Donald cut in, his voice like a knife wrapped in silk. "You tried to sabotage her career. You tried to break her spirit. You made her cry herself to sleep more times than I can count." I turned to my father, finally finding my voice. "You always told me that Wilsons never settle for second best," I said, my voice firm and full of fire. "Well, I didn't. I married the most brilliant, kind, and successful man I've ever known." They didn't have a response. Because there wasn't one. I didn't even realize what I was doing at the time. I just followed my heart. Sandra, my mother, stepped forward, arms wide open. Her voice was soft, almost trembling. "We were wrong," she said. "We see that now. Please come home." I stood still, my eyes taking in the grand office around me. The polished floors, the high ceilings, the expensive furniture. It was a world I used to think I wanted. Then I looked at Donald, my husband, my partner, the man who never tried to control me, who believed in me even when I didn't believe in myself. "I am home, Mom," I said quietly. "But if you want to be part of our lives again, it has to be on our terms. No more trying to control everything. No more games." My father looked like he had just swallowed something bitter. His face twisted, and he struggled to find words. "And what about Wilson Industries?" he finally asked. Donald, calm and collected as always, smiled. "Well, sir, we've actually received a few interesting offers from your biggest competitors. They want exclusive partnerships." But he paused and looked over at me. "Because of the family connection, I thought maybe we could explore something different. If you're willing to talk as equals." That next hour felt like a dream. My father and Donald sat down and spoke like businessmen, two equals at a table. Meanwhile, my mother started fussing over our apartment like it was a crime scene. She didn't waste a second telling us we needed to move somewhere decent. Jeffrey? He had vanished by then. Probably off somewhere licking his wounds in silence. Later that night, back in our cozy little apartment, I finally asked Donald the question that had been on my mind for so long. Why did we still live like this? Why the garage? Why this tiny apartment, when you could buy anything you wanted? Donald pulled me close and kissed my forehead. "The garage keeps me grounded," he said. "It reminds me of where I started. And this apartment, these months with you here, they've been the happiest of my life. We built something real. Something just ours. No money. No fancy names. Just us." Tears welled up in my eyes. "I love you," I whispered. "You sneaky billionaire." He laughed. "I love you, Wilson." Things changed after that night. But not in the flashy, dramatic way people might imagine. We did move, but into a simple, modest house, not a mansion. We picked it out together. It wasn't about showing off. It was about finding a place that felt like home. I took a new role, head of a charitable foundation at Lewis Innovations. I used the resources we had to support young entrepreneurs, especially the ones no one else believed in. Donald? He still spends time at his old garage, teaching underprivileged kids how to fix cars and build confidence. My parents are trying. Mom still drops hints about grandkids needing trust funds, but Dad has actually started to admire Donald. Their weekly business meetings now often turn into long conversations about classic cars or deep talks about life and philosophy. As for me, I finally get what Donald meant when he said that life is too short to live it on paper. Sometimes the most beautiful parts of life come wrapped in the ordinary. A rusty old car, a cheap coffee machine, a tiny apartment, a greasy garage. These things taught me more about love, strength, and happiness than any luxury ever could. And the best part? Now and then, When we drive past that old apartment or pick up takeout from the little Thai place we love, Donald still looks at me the way he did back then, when he was just a mechanic, and I was just a runaway daughter trying to find herself. Because in the end, love doesn't care about bank accounts, last names, or business empires. It only cares about who you are underneath all of that. And we're just Sandra and Donald, a Wilson and a humble mechanic. Not chasing billions, just building something better. We found each other, and that made us rich in the only way that truly matters.